counting noses due to the snow, that we would have a quorum so we could conduct our business this morning. So thank you for the committee members who braved the weather, made it in this morning. A couple of quick announcements. Remember, committee members, if you join on Webex, you're welcome to participate, but you cannot vote. And I also want to draw attention to the committee members that you do have packets for the confirmation hearings for the SRB on Monday. So make sure you look those over and bring those with you on Monday to turn those back in. So with that, we are going to get started. Oh, and one more announcement. Committee, due to the weather, we are moving our informational briefing on broadband to Monday. But we are going to go ahead and have our hearing for SB 493, prohibiting cities and counties from regulating plastic and other containers designed for consumption, transportation, or protection or merchandise, food or beverages. And I know our revisor is here to give us an overview, so if we could just stand at ease for a moment and wait for Charles to come give us a brief on that. Okay, committee, we are now ready to have an overview of Senate Bill 493 from the revisor. Charles, thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 493 restricts the ability of counties and cities to regulate plastic containers. And the key of the bill is on the first page, lines 22, 25, which provides that a municipality shall not adopt or enforce an ordinance, resolution, or regulation that restricts, taxes, prohibits, or otherwise regulates the use, disposition, or sale of auxiliary containers. And auxiliary containers is defined right at the top of the bill, line 7 of page 1. It's a broad definition. It means without limitation, a bag, cup, package, container, bottle, device, or other packaging made of cloth, paper, plastic, foam plastic, expanded plastic, cardboard, corrugated material, aluminum, glass, post-consumer recycled material, or similar coated or laminated material, and that's designed for the consumption, transportation, or protection of merchandise, food, or beverage at a manufacturing, distribution, or processing facility, or a food service or retail establishment. Food service establishment is also defined in line 15. Municipality means a city, county, or the unified government. Retail establishment, again, a broad definition, any retail establishment, including but not limited to a grocery store, supermarket, convenience store, liquor store, dry cleaning establishment, pharmacy, and so on, clothing store, department store. There are some exceptions to the prohibition against regulation. Those are listed at the bottom. The list starts at the bottom of page 1 under subsection B. So municipalities may, they operate a recycling, composting, or solid waste disposal program. They may regulate the use of auxiliary containers on property owned by the municipality. They can pass or enforce a general state or general local sales and use tax. They can restrict the use of glass containers based on public safety concerns. They can prohibit littering, and they can set reasonable standards for the regulation of alcohol possession as otherwise provided by law. This bill would become effective on July 1st, 2022, if it would pass.
Thank you, Charles. Questions? Senator Ware.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Charles, on line 35, passing or enforcing general state, what would that look like? What, for instance?
So, I guess if maybe, for example, restricting glass containers at a event or something like that, or maybe that kind of thing. The bill doesn't really specify. It just sort of gives a broad discretion, public safety concerns. So, you know, that could be, you know, you can't take a glass container, you can't have a glass container outside of a restaurant or something like that as well, I suppose.
And a follow-up. So would this mean that a municipality, if this were adopted, couldn't regulate plastic bags, but could put a tax on their use?
So the bill, as drafted, indicates that a municipality shall not adopt or enforce an ordinance, resolution, or regulation that taxes the use, disposition, or sale of auxiliary containers. And that language is right there on lines 22 through 25 on the
Okay, on 33 and then 34, did that, what tax is that talking about?
I think that reference is just to a general state or general local sales and use tax. So I guess the bill is not attempting to restrict, you know, the sales taxes that municipalities, you know, can impose under current law with respect to a general tax.
Okay, not specific to this then, is what you're thinking.
Other questions for the reviser? Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Can you remind me who introduced this, please?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'll have to go look at my materials. I'm not sure what the organization was, but perhaps the conferees can address that.
Any other questions for the reviser? Seeing none, we will open the hearing on SB 493. Our first proponent is via Webex, Kent Eccles, on behalf of the Kansas Chamber. Kent, are you
Good morning.
with us?
Can you hear me?
Good morning. We sure can. You may proceed.
And yeah, this is Kent Eccles. I'm here on behalf of the Kansas Chamber, and Senator Stephan, this is our bill. To answer your question right up front, we introduced this. So thank you for the opportunity to participate via WebEx. I live in Johnson County, and I left my house at 7 a.m. this morning to try to get over there. And I've got a four-wheel drive vehicle, and K10 was a hot mess. I was going 20 miles an hour. So opted to turn around and not risk it. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to participate this way. Much rather be there with you in person. The reviser did a great job explaining this bill. We think it's very simple. I mean, it's not even 2 pages, and we think it's common sense. And I kind of want to get into why we think so. You've probably heard, Wichita and Lawrence, Topeka and Salina in the past have considered regulating these products, these auxiliary containers. Kansas has 105 counties, as you know. We've got 627 municipalities, and the business community doesn't believe that we need a hodgepodge of conflicting regulations or bans from one city or county to the next. You'll hear from Zach Taylor here in a little bit. He's got some great examples of how that's caused mayhem in other states. I think he'll hit on that. But I just want to kind of get into real quickly the effect that would have if we had all those regulations county to county or city to city in the state of Kansas. It hurts small businesses. They don't have the economies of scale that larger retailers do. So they're going to have to buy more expensive products if they were banned in the municipality. It also hurts consumers because those costs are going to be passed on to the consumers. And then, of course, there's the supply chain issue. We've all heard nationally how we're challenged with supply chains. I'll give you an example. There's retailers in Kansas that have multiple locations in multiple cities and counties. So passing a restriction or a ban in one city or county, that retailer then has to supply or ship special products to that one county, but not the next county, or that one city and not the next city. So that affects the supply chain. I'm quite certain the opponents to this bill, you're going to hear about, local home rule and that sort of thing. There are times when statewide uniformity makes sense. And this is one of those times. I mean, we have statewide uniformity on regulating things from firearms to labor laws to oil and gas regulations to taxes, and that makes sense. And that's for a reason, so that we don't have regulations differing from county to county. Another consumer example is that, paper and other alternatives cost a lot more. I kind of hit on that, but paper, for example, paper bags cost 8 cents a bag. Alternatives are even more, and the consumers are ultimately going to bear the burden of paying for those. So, Kansas Chamber is a free market organization. We believe in the free market. Consumers can currently choose where to shop. They can choose to bring their own bags. Retailers across the state can choose what kind of bags and containers they want to use now. And they're doing that. I mean, just a few examples: Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Hy-Vee, just a few to name a few. They all offer paper if you want. They ask you if you want paper or plastic, or if you have your own bag. So we think the free market is the way to go and not have a hodgepodge of regulations. You'll see a map on the back of my testimony that shows states across the country that have adopted statewide uniformity. And if Kansas were to pass this law and it were to become, or pass this bill and it were to become law, we join 22 other states that have similar laws on the books. So you can look at that map and you can see most of our surrounding states already have these laws on the books, or they're actively discussing it. Colorado, for example, has it on the books, but it expires, you'll see, in 2024. So I will stop there. I'll stand for questions now, Madam Chair, or when you get through all the proponents, however you want to do it.
Thank you very much, Kent. We will hold questions till all proponents have had a chance to testify. So next we have Zachary Taylor, Director, American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance via Webex. Zachary, are you there?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the opportunity this morning. As you mentioned, I'm the director of the American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance. We represent the U.S. manufacturers and recyclers of plastic bags. We're a strong supporter of Senate Bill 493 to establish statewide uniformity for many of the reasons that Kent just shared. He's right. Kansas passing this bill into law would join nearly 24 other states that already have this on the books. And it is in the interest of ensuring that there's a level playing field for businesses of all sizes, ensuring that there's a single uniform marketplace, and making sure that we don't have a hodgepodge of local regulations that have conflicting definitions, conflicting standards, and conflicting requirements. Pardon me. Massachusetts is a great example. There's 149 different local regulations across the state of Massachusetts. In one county alone, there are 39 different regulations with 9 separate standards for what types of bags are allowed. That's obviously a compliance headache and a nightmare for businesses of all sizes. And to Kent's point, it really does disrupt the ability of businesses to operate single supply chains and have predictable regulatory environments. As a result, they'll have to buy alternative bags that are much more expensive. Those costs be passed on to consumers, and there is a massive shortage of paper bags in the marketplace right now. That is not expected to be alleviated for several years. We certainly recognize that what you'll probably hear from opponents to this is the importance of being able to have home rule and local control. But we do believe that some things are best regulated uniformly by the state. Auxiliary containers are one of them. Certainly wouldn't want to be in a situation where cups that are okay at one intersection might not be okay at the next, like happens in and around the city of Boston. It also point out that a lot of times in the past, these local patchworks have been utilized as a lever to force state action on this issue. And unfortunately, a lot of these policies end up hurting businesses without doing a whole lot for the environment. If I could go into that a little bit, they'll say it's important to do this to address litter, waste, and other issues. But quite simply, the unintended consequences far outweigh any progress that would achieve. The reasons are pretty simple. So U.S. Environmental Protection Agency data shows that plastic bags and sacks combined, that's everything from your tortilla chip bag to your grocery bag, account for 0.3% of municipal solid waste. And litter survey after litter survey has found that plastic bags, plastic grocery bags account for less than 1% of litter cleanup items. And so you have to weigh that and the limited effect that any of these policies would have at the local level in addressing litter or waste against the unintended consequences that are going to disrupt business operations. We certainly are, as an organization, we're the first to say if you don't need a bag, don't take one. We believe strongly that plastic bags should be disposed of properly. And what the research shows is that actually the plastic carryout bag, when it is disposed of properly or recycled through the store take back program, it's the option for consumers with the fewest environmental impact. So we believe that the marketplace should remain free and open. And if the state needs to step in to do something, we recommend promoting increased recycling, recycled content, and want to be a partner on those discussions. But I think it's important to make sure that there aren't a patchwork of local rules and local regulations that will confound businesses and create headaches for consumers as well. I think I'll stop there and pause for questions, but I think you had mentioned we'll wait to the end. So.
Yes, thank you very much, Zachary. If you could stick around, that would be great. Next, we have John Monroe, Governmental Affairs Consultant for the Kansas Beverage Association on Webex. John, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Please proceed.
Perfect. Thank you. Chairwoman Erickson, members of the Senate Commerce Committee. I am John Monroe, the Government Affairs Consultant for the Kansas Beverage Association. The KBA is a state trade organization for non-alcoholic beverage bottling companies here in our state. The product manufactured and distributed by members of the KBA includes soft drinks, bottled waters, isotonic drinks, juice, dairy-based beverages, teas, and a whole host of other items. We are proud to be a part of the great fabric of our state. We have 3,200 direct Kansas jobs and a direct economic impact of $3 billion. Senate Bill 493 preempts local units of government from imposing taxes, bans, or other restrictions upon the sale of single-use plastics. This provides for consistent and uniform standards across our state. Local government restrictions upon the product of any nature constitutes restraints on trade and place an undue burden on distributors of such products. Individual municipalities having different rules for any product can cause disruption in production, retail ordering, and distribution. Regarding plastic products, the beverage industry is very proud that our bottles are 100% recyclable. Our bottles are not single use. They are made to be remade. We also have our website, Every Bottle Back, that talks about our environmental work on working towards making sure that every bottle is recyclable. So as an industry, we are working towards that goal, and we're there with our bottles. I would also like to note your attention to the exhibit that we have from the ABA, our national partner. They have a breakdown of our impact on the state of Kansas for our industry. And with that, I'm happy to stand with any questions.
Thank you so much, John. Next, we have Scott Schneider, Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. He is actually here in person. Welcome to the committee, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Scott Schneider with the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Prior to the pandemic, about 150,000 Kansans worked in the hospitality sector. There are just under 5,000 licensees for food establishments in the state of Kansas. The Restaurant Association represents just under half of those. So it's a significant industry. It's a broad industry across the state. And I want to talk about two things. One, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and what's happened to our supply chain. And then the second thing I want to talk about is home rule and why it's a tool, and this bill is an appropriate application of that tool that the Constitution ascribes to this committee. I was in Wichita, I live in Wichita, went to Bob and Luigi's Pizza down the road, got a pizza for the family, came home, and there was a note on it that said, "Thank you to our pizza friends for supplying this box," and it was from AJ's Pizza. So AJ's and Nola's are literally giving pizza boxes to other restaurateurs because the supply chain is so disrupted right now. And one, thanks for everybody being friendly to each other so I can get my pizza. But two, when the local government wants to interject themselves into a very complicated moment in time post-pandemic, we think that it's unnecessary, and we probably need to let the marketplace work. They solve that problem for them. Plastics and other things have their own issues. We can't get cups. We can't get other things to keep these restaurants going. And so I think that this is a reasonable way to let the marketplace work and move forward. The second thing I want to talk about is home rule. Home rule was a tool that was passed in constitutional tool in 1961. A dear friend of mine, Jack Glaves, was chair of the local government committee back in 1956, I believe. And he goes, "Scott, you don't understand. Every rule that a city passed had to come before the legislature to get authority because our Constitution didn't ascribe any authority independent of what was in statute. So providing a home rule for municipalities was a tool that they could actually have some ownership of. The balancing part of that, if the state wanted to act, they have to pass a uniform law. And so that is how those two things work. There's a reason constitutional home rule makes sense, and there's a reason that the legislature, if they want to retain that authority, has to make a uniform application of the law, and we think that this is a reasonable approach to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Next, we have Becky Schwartz, Executive Director, Fuel True Independent Energy and Convenience. Welcome to the committee, Becky.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I am Becky Schwartz. I'm Executive Director of Fuel True Independent Energy and Convenience Stores. We represent the convenience stores across the state. And for today's testimony, also including the Retail Grocers Association. So you've heard a lot of talked today already about the consistency. And for our members, that's really key. Some of our members have 3 stores. Some of them have 30-some stores that cover multiple locations across the state. And it can become complicated when you're having to figure out which store can have what product or which store has these rules. So that's one of the reasons why we support this bill. The second reason is, and as ironic as it sounds, preventing waste. A lot of our members order these things in bulk. So their storeroom may have pallets of plastic bags, pallets of cups. If a community where they have 3 or 4 stores gets rid of plastic bags, those are just sitting there. And then the last reason is we service the transient community. Truck drivers are a perfect example of that. They are maybe traveling from Missouri, they may be traveling from Texas. They don't always have products like a cup or a bag to go in and get their groceries out of the convenience store or the grocery store. So they need some reason or some way without having to carry it all in their arms or having to purchase a bag to transport their products. So those are the 3 reasons why we support this bill today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Becky. And next we have Dan Murray, Kansas State Director, National Federation of Independent Business. Welcome to the committee, Dan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, I am Dan Murray, Kansas State Director for NFIB Kansas. We represent nearly 4,000 small business owners of all types here today to express our strong support of Senate Bill 493. We represent the small convenience stores, the small restaurants, the small supermarkets, the small liquor stores, the small dry cleaners that are listed in this bill, certainly not limited to those types, but certainly those are the kinds of small businesses that are on Main Street. They are the backbone of the Kansas economy. And this bill provides 2 things for us. 1, regulatory certainty, prevents that patchwork uniformity that the other conferees have mentioned. And then 2, economies of scale particularly hit small businesses harder because of their purchasing power is more limited to the larger than relative to the larger businesses. So again, we urge you to pass this bill out favorably. Would stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Dan. Committee, originally we had Jason Watkins as oral testimony, but he is written only. So Jason, look for his testimony in your packet, please. So with that concludes our proponent testimony. So committee, question for any of the proponents? We'll go Senator Holland, then Senator Steffen.
Madam Chair, I'll defer to Senator Steffman. He's over in the corner if he'd like to go first. Well, I'm not going to keep it short, so I offered you. Okay. Madam Chair, if I could ask a question of Kent Eccles first, a number of questions of Kent, and then Mr. Taylor afterwards.
Kent, are you
I'm here.
still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, very
Got me?
good.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Kent, welcome to the committee. Good morning.
Good
Hey,
morning.
you live in Lawrence, don't you?
No, sir, I live in Olathe.
Oh, you moved to Olathe, but did you live in Lawrence at one time?
Briefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the matter with if you're a consumer living in Lawrence or Olathe or whatever? I want to dig into this a little bit more. If I'm a Lawrence business and I want to basically at least appear to be eco-friendly to my consumers, what's the matter with having the locals do that based on the consensus of the citizens that live there, since at the end of the day, they're paying for basically the trash bill?
Well, Senator, it's a good question. I think that if a local business wants to offer all paper products or any other type of product container, they're certainly free to do that. I don't think anything's stopping them from doing that. And I think if consumers appreciate that, they will shop there. I mean, I think that makes sense. I just don't think that there's a role for government to tell all retailers in, that municipality or Douglas County, for example, that they must use these kind of containers.
Madam Chair, some more questions, please.
Yes, proceed.
I'll ask a series. Okay, so Kent, let me push back on that. I mean, basically, when you look at the amount of plastics and trash out there and just continues to pile up and pile up and pile up, and make no mistake, you know, citizens are paying for that piling up of trash. It would seem to me that basically a local unit of government, depending on their situation, would want to have some input on basically the byproducts of commerce that is hanging around their communities. Can you make the argument why they want to have that?
No, and I think, you know, it says in the bill that there's nothing in here preventing them from establishing those programs to deal with waste. And as Zach Taylor mentioned in his testimony, you know, the EPA data shows that plastic bags and sacks of all kinds, not just the single-use takeout from grocery stores. I mean, they're 0.3% of municipal solid waste. And then if you just look at just the carryout bags, it's even a smaller fraction. So it's not a huge percentage of the solid waste that they have to deal with.
Okay, well, I would just put
Senator.
it doesn't, because I think you're avoiding it. I think you're still against basically local units having any sort of say on trash that's piling up in their communities, independent of a business voluntarily doing it. And I guess I would kind of push back too on, to me, if you're going to talk about free market, this is free market. To me, the free market is totally local control. I mean, to me, this is basically, if citizens have a concern about refuse buildup, whatever it is, they should be able to basically put together solutions to how to address that, you know, independent of what the polluters want to control it. I guess my question is to date, what types of issues have you seen locally in Kansas where you guys are all excited about why you need to proactively move forward on a state regulatory scheme to address this issue?
Well, I think, like I said at the beginning of my testimony, I mean, we've seen there's discussions taking place in Wichita and Sedgwick County. You've brought up Lawrence. I know in the past, Topeka and Salina have talked about regulating these auxiliary containers. And back to my point, I think this is one of those instances where it makes sense to have uniform regulation statewide for all the reasons I mentioned in my testimony.
So some additional questions, Madam Chair. So just so I understand, I mean, we look at the state's population demographics, 80% of our folks by 2030, 80% plus are going to be living in Northeast Kansas and South Central. It seems to me if those folks want to be able to pass local ordinances to deal with their refuse, they should be able to do that. And how you would label that as being anti-free market, I guess I really just understand. Let me ask you another question. The state chamber, when Sam Brownback worked that deal with the Leavenworth County, I think this Tonganoxie deal up there for that Tyson Foods chicken processing plant, you guys supported that, didn't you?
Sir, I was not with the chamber when that happened, so I'm not familiar with us being involved in that issue.
Okay, well, the Kansas chamber was behind that deal. I mean, to me, that was an ecological disaster that you're going to unleash on Northeast Kansas and the Kansas River. I kind of find it a little bit rich that you're here talking today once again about basically advocating for, you know, polluters. And I just think that, you know, at the end of the day, this to me looks like it is smacks of regulation, it smacks of anti-consumerism, it's anti-environment, obviously. And so with that, I'd like to ask Zachary Taylor some questions, Madam Chair.
Yes, and Senator, if you could.
Do I need to make it pithy?
Yes, please, and so we can get everyone in, and then if we need be, we can circle back. But go ahead and ask your questions for him, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so Zach, I have a question on that's a fancy name, American Recycled Plastic Bag Alliance. Who's all in that deal?
We represent the U.S. manufacturers of plastic bags.
Okay, so more polluters. Okay, and I have a question about the and Madam Chair, one of the question, maybe it's to Kent, maybe it's to Zach. Somebody brought up the Massachusetts, all these local laws in Massachusetts. Was that a Kent or Zach question, Madam Chair? Do you recall?
I believe that was Zach. I believe you referenced that, if that's correct, Zach.
That is correct.
Okay, Zach, so here's my question to you. If you had all these local ordinances popping up in Massachusetts, And if it really was a regulatory nightmare for local businesses, don't you think the Massachusetts General Assembly, whatever that august body refers to itself as, would have jumped in and fixed the situation by now?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'll note that there are several proposals in Massachusetts right now to unify the marketplace. All of them include preemption of local governments.
Okay. Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate the committee's indulgence.
Thank you very much. Senator Stephan.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Senator Holland, for your brevity. A question for Kent Eccles. We have
Yes,
this
sir.
map, uniformity across America, and it shows basically from South Texas clear up to Canada, straight north of us, we have uniform laws in regards to this. How closely do they follow the Senate Bill 493? Are a lot of these states in lockstep with this bill, or is it kind of the Wild West among this sort of bill? Thank you.
Yeah, Senator, good question. I may defer to Zach on this one, but I know some of them are very similar to the language of this bill. Zach, I don't know if I may, Madam Chair, ever defer to Zach.
Zach, would you care to weigh in on that question?
You're muted, Zach.
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Senator. Yeah, generally all of these laws are very similar. They all, in effect, do the same thing. They limit the ability to regulate these products to the state level, so it's uniform. Nothing in this bill prohibits the state of Kansas from at some point in the future choosing to consider policies around auxiliary containers. As I mentioned in my testimony earlier, the bag manufacturers we represent care deeply about sustainability. We want to see more recycling and more recycled content. I think that's a better way to go than one-off bans, county by county, city by city, that make it more difficult for businesses to operate and less efficient for them. But also, as I noted in my testimony, the data bears out that at least as it relates to bag bans, it's unlikely to make a difference in the issues of litter and waste. Again, 0.3% municipal solid waste accounts for all plastic bags and sacks combined. Carryout bags are a fraction of that, and that's data from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
So, any other questions? Senator Ware.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I guess this might be a question for Mr. Eccles. You were saying that that plastic amounts to a small fraction of the total waste in a landfill. My question is, how long does it take for these plastic bags to break down as opposed to paper or cloth or wood that might be thrown into these? It's my guess that I know the answer, but I'll have you answer it, please.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. And I think certainly it depends on the type of plastic bag. I mean, there's different types. There's compostable, there's recyclable, there's, just plain bags. But I would defer to Zach on that one probably too. He's probably got the data on that, if that's all right.
Zach, do you have any information on that question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Senator. So the answer is that in a properly managed landfill, nothing breaks down from a banana peel to a paper bag to a plastic bag. There's no degradation, and so everything will be entombed in there forever. That said, that's sort of the advantage of plastic bags. They're reused according to research from Recycle Quebec, the Recycling Authority in Quebec in Canada. Up to 77% of plastic bags are reused for household chores like picking up after the dog, lining a waste paper bin in your bathroom. And so they go in there and they're reused. And when consumers reuse them, that helps them avoid purchasing other alternative products that might be more plastic intensive. And so I'd also direct you, the New York Times did a very interesting analysis of a life cycle assessment of various carryout bags and found that cotton totes in particular are not as environmentally friendly as many people would believe. They require up to 20,000 reuses to offset their environmental impact. That's every day for 55 years. And so providing folks with an option to use American-made recyclable plastic bags for getting their groceries home or reuse them at home for other tasks later on, I think is an option that stores should have if they're concerned about the environment.
Quick follow-up, if that's okay?
Certainly, Senator.
Did you just say that the items in a landfill do not decompose?
Yes.
My goodness, that is a brand new, startling idea.
Any other questions for our proponents? Seeing none, we will move on to opponent testimony. Committee, we have Zach Pastora, Legislative Director and State Lobbyist, Kansas Chapter of Sierra Club on Webex. Zach, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome to committee, Zach.
Hey, great to be before you. Thank you, Madam Chair and the Senate Commerce Committee. I want to echo Mr. Eccles' sentiment there. I tried to get going this morning, ended up pulling my neighbor out of the snow drift and thought I've learned my lessons in previous time not to mess with Mother Nature. So thanks for allowing me to testify before you virtually today. But speaking of mess, you know, we've made a mess of our beautiful state in our communities with the plastic trash and other litter. And the only good thing about the snow is you don't get to see that on your daily ride to work. Last time I testified on a similar bill, I think I counted 39 plastic bags just for my drive to Linwood to Topeka. But of course, didn't see that many this morning going out and about. But so I can talk a lot at length about how plastic has essentially created a big mess for our oceans, for our aquatic ecosystems, have tarnished our landscapes in Kansas, our roadways, our stormwater infrastructure, etc. But I really think that this bill is more about democracy. It's about the ability for our communities to self-govern and do what they think that is right for their city or town. And that's why the Kansas Legislature passed a constitutional amendment 60 years ago to uphold home rule. And if you look at that, Article 12, Section 5B says cities are hereby empowered to determine their local affairs and government, and that powers, authorities granted to cities pursuant to this section shall liberally be construed for the purpose of giving cities the largest measure of self-government. You know, communities should be allowed to voluntarily decide what's right for themselves rather than by other actors, not from their community, saying what's right for their community. Okay, so that's a very conservative ethic. It's something we ought to cherish, and we should allow our communities to self-govern, especially when it's trying to do something as good as cleaning up their community and helping the natural ecosystems by trying to get plastic reduced and go to the source. There is no hodgepodge of city laws right now. There's no laws on the books at any city level reducing plastics. There's been talk of it, but there's no hodgepodge right now. And in fact, it's a good thing. We have some cities that won't allow you to be on your phone in the car, driving a car in their community. That's good. It's helped to protect public safety. We should allow some of these local communities that are seeing the problem firsthand, especially our bigger cities, to do something about it. Let's let that experiment play out. These local ordinances that these folks these cities are considering are backed by popular support. KU School of Medicine recent study of over 2,000 Wichita residents said that more than two-thirds, 71% would support a ban on or tax on plastic bags locally. A nationwide survey that was just released about a week ago surveyed over 1,000 Americans. 8 in 10 Americans are concerned about single-use plastics and would support local and state policies to address them. So these are kind of popular grassroots, locally, for the people driven based ordinances that these folks, these cities are considering. And they're taking the input from our large grocery stores, business entities, and all that when coming up with some of these laws. I'll point out that there's several states that have adopted preemption, okay, but there's more states without a preemption clause than not, or have instituted a statewide ban on plastics, okay? And I'll point out our neighbor to the west, Colorado. They just overturned their preemption bill on plastics through state legislation, and now that bill would allow for phasing out of single-use plastics statewide over the next few years. And so that's good, especially for our western border. We're glad that we don't have to have as many plastic bags flying across the home on the range. I mean, we got more plastic bags than tumbleweeds in the state of Kansas now, just anecdotally. I want to say that there's a concern about the cost being passed on consumers. That same survey of Wichita residents said that they're willing to pay a small price for the reduction of plastic bags in the community. These taxes and or local ordinance to go bag free actually work. We saw in California, some of the cities have been able to reduce their plastics through a bring your own bag ordinance, reduce plastic bags by 89% in their storm drain system, 60% in their creeks and rivers, and 59% in their city streets and neighborhoods. So that's important to keep in mind. I want to draw attention to the litter study that's been done last year by Wichita State University. And I always appreciate hearing from other Zachs, but I'd be curious to the sources of his studies on litter study, because our state litter study, half of the city's litter larger than 4 inches was composed of plastic or foam, and 75% of that plastic litter what came from the food and beverage industry. About half of all the litter they found came from the food and beverage industry. So there should be some responsibility here, and that brings me to one of my final points, committee, is that it's one thing to have a state uniform law, to say that we shouldn't have, and I'd argue we don't have a hodgepodge yet, but maybe if that's a good idea, if it creates harm on our businesses, and we haven't heard any economic estimate of the harm that might create. But I think this bill is disingenuous because it doesn't provide for a statewide program to help clean up our communities. It doesn't provide for our manufacturers of plastics, our grocery store and retail chains that are producing the plastics we're seeing across the state. It doesn't provide for a fund for a reduction of plastic, an educational campaign for the state to reduce plastics that are ending up in our roadways and our aquatic systems. So without that, I think, we can have a meaningful statewide law to address this, but without that piece that's going to positively impact our communities and the environment, it's just disingenuous to have an outlaw the plastics without a plan to help our communities facing the problem. So, I didn't even get into the environmental consequences, committee. I'd be happy to talk about, how these bags, get used in 12 seconds, but don't break down for 1,000 years or more. But I just want to remind you, out here in the rural part of the country, out here in Linwood, where I'm from, we got a popular saying, "Don't tread on me." It's a very conservative ethic where we got to be responsible and respectful of one another and not interfere with our ability to enjoy the benefits of life and self-governance. Well, the single-use plastic trash is treading on the people of Kansas. It's treading on our properties. It's trashing our communities, our natural ecosystems, and it adds up to a deterioration of our wonderful home we call Kansas, and added
Zach,
costs socialized
Zach,
to the taxpayers.
If
So,
you could please wrap up,
yeah.
we do have a couple of other opponents.
Sure.
Thank you
Yep.
so much.
That's about it. You've heard it from me. Happy to work with the proponents on a balanced bill to help clean up the plastic in our communities. But as is, we would oppose this impact on our constitutional freedoms and local rule of Kansas.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. And if you could stick around in case there are questions, I would appreciate it after all opponents have been able to testify.
You bet.
Next, we have Lori Lawrence from Wichita, Kansas on Webex. Lori, are you with us? Lori?
Okay, I didn't realize I could unmute myself.
Oh, there you are. Okay, okay. Welcome to the committee, Lori.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Chairwoman Erickson and members of the committee. I am from Wichita, and that's been kind of a topic here up until now. We have been working on an ordinance to bring to the city council. We don't know that the city council is going to pass it. We don't have any input yet on, we haven't even brought it to them at this point. We have done several studies as a city to try to show where we're just focusing on bags are a problem. And one of the studies showed us that the cost to consumers, which was mentioned here this morning already, turns out to be about $10 a family in the first year. And then years after that, there is no cost because that's just the cost of purchasing bags. For businesses, that is a concern about how they are going to handle getting different amounts of plastic bags or regular bags or paper bags or just using reusable bags for their stores. Each store, as I have been told from actually some of the people at Dillon's, in fact, Sheila Regier from Dillon's Management in Hutchinson has said that each store orders their own bag. There is no overall ordering of plastic containers for any of the stores. They make their own decision. The cost of those free plastic bags actually is not free to the stores. It may be free to consumers, but it goes toward the overhead that stores have to pay each month to renew their supplies, including their toilet paper, including their bags. One of the things that the state of Kansas does not regulate is the amount of toilet paper people can buy. I hope that doesn't ever happen. Or the speed limits that we have on our street. Wichita speed limits are different than Hayes speed limits. I've been there. Than Lawrence speed limits, I've been there. Than Manhattan speed limits, I've been there too. We all have to make our own decisions for what's best for our city. And this flies in the face of the home rule, but also everything that we stand for as a city. We make our decisions on what's best for our city and what's best for the people who live in our city and what's best for our health. And I understand some of the comments that were made. Using a cloth bag 10 zillion times is not really true. If you take into account the entire life cycle of a plastic bag, it comes out to be greater or equal to the cost of a cloth bag. And cloth bags will be used. They're going to go in my will until I die, and I've been using them for 30 years already. So since you all, I mean, other than one person that I know of, don't live in Wichita, I'm not sure how you would be able to judge what we need to do in our city and try to put regulations on us, telling us that we don't know what's best for ourselves. We hope that you all will vote no on this bill so that each city in Kansas can have their own decisions on what they would like to do with their waste, with their refuse, with their trash. Because right now we are dealing with an incredible amount of trash, being the largest city in Kansas. And we really need to be able to put some limits on that, some restrictions on that, so that we've already filled up our landfill. And now we're shipping our trash out of county to be landfilled. We're at the limits here. We cannot continue. So if you don't mind, please vote no on this bill. I did want to give you a little bit of background on the recycling of plastic bags and the recycling of everything else. I've spoken with Stutzman's. Stutzman's recycles everything from Sedgwick County, McPherson County, and Reno County. All the recycling is shipped there. Even some other counties ship part of their out that way. And
Ms. Lawrence, Ms. Lawrence, I appreciate your testimony, but if you could possibly wrap up, we are running out of time. So if you could possibly wrap up, I would really appreciate it.
Okay, just one bit of information. When that gets into the recycling system, their machines have to be shut down. They have to be cleaned out. They have to clean all those little bits and pieces out, and then they have to put everything back together. They lose time, they lose money, and that's what costs us more to recycle in Wichita and Sedgwick and all of the other counties that they serve. Please, please respect the rights of people in different cities across the state. Vote no on this bill, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and I hope everyone in my hometown is staying safe and warm. Next we have Sarah Chenoweth, League of Kansas Municipalities on Webex. Sarah, are you with us? Okay, well, if she happens to join us, let me know in the next few minutes. Committee, that sums up our opponent testimony. Questions for any of the opponents? Senator Holland.
I'll be very quick. I just want to make a comment on Mr. Pastora's comments. I really do think this is a local control constitutional issue, and I really want to push back against Mr. Eccles' comment about how it's appropriate to have state level control, particularly of our labor laws. I think it was a disaster when the state interjected and basically got rid of having locals being able to establish prevailing wages on certain types of projects. I understand for certain communities, more rural areas where you have workplaces that are workforce that's hard to find, you basically want to attract out of area folks. But for our more populous regions in Wichita and northeast Kansas, getting rid of the locals to establish prevailing wage basically ensures that you're going to have misclassified workers, out of area workers come in and get those jobs to the detriment of the local citizenry. So thank you for those comments, Zach. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions, comments for the opponents? Seeing none, committee, I will draw your attention to written opposition testimony. We have Rabbi Madi Reber, Executive Director of Interfaith Action, Brandy Johnson from Kansas Organization of Recyclers, Kathy Richardson, Interim Sustainability Director for the City of Lawrence, Stuart Little, Cities of Merriam, Mission, Prairie Village, and Westwood Hills, J.C. Moore, Teresa Wilk, Kent Rowe, Kelly Johnston, Margaret Kramer, Alan Bowman from the Sierra Club, Jane Burns from Wichita, Tad Kramer, Susie Scott, Nancy Muma, and Felix Ravello. So I will draw your attention to that testimony. And with that, we will close the hearing on SB 493. Committee, we're planning on working House Bill 2219 today. I have received some information that there may be some changes or amendments to that, so I am going to wait until Monday to work that bill and potentially any other bills that we have heard on Monday. So we will not be working tomorrow. We will be working Monday. Again, make sure you look through the confirmation packet, bring those with you on Monday. And with that, we are adjourned.